CXO Community.
Bueno, buenas tardes a todos. Muchas gracias por haber venido a nuestra conferencia. Estamos muy contentos con esta conferencia. De hecho, crece todos los años, la conferencia crece un poco más, sigue creciendo. Estamos muy contentos con este crecimiento, pero estamos contentos también porque traemos un mensaje muy interesante con esta conferencia. Nosotros creemos que la oportunidad para los CIOs latinoamericanos es muy grande ahora. ¿Qué quiero decir? Quiero decir que...
All right. Thank you.
I understand Spanish enough, so it's okay.
Okay. Es una oportunidad. Yo decía que ahora es una oportunidad muy grande para los CIOs latinoamericanos. Y lo que quiero decir es que en esta situación que vemos en el mundo, que es una situación compleja, una situación imprevisible, o compleja e imprevisible, sí, y seguramente una situación de gran cambio. Vemos que Latinoamérica en general tiene condiciones de sacar provecho. Si hay una crisis en Europa, si hay una crisis en Estados Unidos, muy probablemente no tendremos una crisis en Latinoamérica, o seguramente no tendremos una crisis al mismo nivel que en Europa o en América del Norte. Lo que significa que si hay una crisis, toda la gente, todos los países van abajo y nosotros no vamos tanto, salimos adelante, ¿verdad? Entonces, es el momento para las empresas latinoamericanas apalancar sus ventajas en el escenario global. Y las ventajas competitivas hoy son ventajas en general soportadas por innovaciones tecnológicas, por la TI, por aplicar innovaciones de negocio hoy casi que exclusivamente son apoyadas por herramientas de TI o las tecnologías de TI. Entonces, es un momento muy bueno, un momento en que el profesional de TI latinoamericano tiene que hacer lo mejor para sacar provecho de la situación internacional y de la tecnología. Pero también es un reto porque al mismo tiempo en que identificamos la oportunidad de apalancar objetivos de negocio con la tecnología o crear la innovación de negocios con la tecnología, hay mucha incertidumbre también, hay nuevos modelos, nuevas tecnologías, hay muchos factores que contribuyen para hacer del escenario de tecnología un escenario complejo. Entonces, es un momento que por todas las razones de negocio, razones económicas y razones de tecnología, es un momento que yo llamo indisciplinado, o sea, la acción empresarial, la acción es una acción indisciplinada, en el sentido de que las empresas no tienen tiempo para analizar todas las variables importantes, para entonces hacer una planeación de acuerdo. Es un momento donde entonces que exige a las personas mucho foco en los objetivos de negocio y mucha disciplina en la adopción de tecnología para apalancar estos objetivos. Foco y disciplina en un momento de incertidumbre, en un momento indisciplinado. Por eso también estamos muy contentos de estar acá para traer un mensaje que va a ayudar al CIO argentino, el CIO de otros países latinoamericanos que nos visitan también, a planear mejor cómo en el 2012 él puede apalancar los objetivos de negocio con la tecnología. Entonces, por razones de negocio, por razones de tecnología y por la bienvenida que el pueblo argentino nos ha dado en esta conferencia, estamos todos muy contentos. Tenemos algunas informaciones interesantes para soportar esto lo que yo platicaba ahora, que mi colega Donald va a platicar con ustedes. Creemos que esta combinación de un analista americano, a él no le gusta que le llamen gringo, pero a un analista americano y un analista latinoamericano, podemos hacer una combinación, una mezcla interesante, sino rara, de lo que podemos ofrecer a los CIOs argentinos con esta conferencia.
Okay, if you have your phones for translation, put them on. Probably it's a good idea because since we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to probably talk fast. Instead of poor translators, we have a purpose. But what I wanted to do, I know that the press loves the numbers. We like backup information. Okay, so I've taken a few of the slides from our scenario that talk about some of what Casio just mentioned, because when you look at the estimates for GDP for 2011, you'll see that the crisis in Europe and the United States is becoming more and more clear. So let's start with that. The worldwide, by the way, these numbers come from an organization in Massachusetts called IHS Global Insight. That's the organization that Gartner uses for all economic data, because we do not do our own economic data. We don't estimate GDP or those types of things. When we look at their report from August, so excuse me, it's pretty up to date. You see that the worldwide rate for 2011 is about 3.1% increase in GDP. But notice the mature countries in Europe, Western Europe, and the United States, North America are around 1.6, 1.7% growth in 2011. That's way below normal for the United States. It's not for Europe. Europe is normally around 1 or 2%, okay, and it's a slow growth, which is where GDP should be in a normal country, in a mature country. So what I do think is happening is the United States is moving towards, or North America is moving towards, a slower overall growth permanently. They're not going to return to the 3, 4, 5, 6% growth that they're used to. But that in itself will cause a crisis in the United States because they're not used to that. They would prefer to see themselves, they think they should grow at 6% a year. The crisis in Europe is worrying. As you all know, the euro is under attack. And that combined with the non-economic recovery in the United States, even though the government says there is a recovery, okay, could very well set off a worldwide crisis again. But I agree with Casio that if we look at what could happen in Latin America, the result of even a worldwide crisis will be less threatening to us, less long-lived. So it may take the Western Europe and the United States 2 or 3 years more to get out of this crisis. I suspect that it will be another one down here with 2 quarters, 3 quarters, 4 quarters a year of problems at the most. And even if our GDP was cut in half, Argentina for 6% for 2011, half is 3%, that's the worldwide average. That's still not bad. Okay. So what effect is this going to have on IT spending? Well, by our estimates, okay, IT spending in Latin America is second in the world. Now these are the Gartner numbers from June, which are the Q2 2011 numbers. So in other words, they were published right at the end of Q2. And they are the forecasts for Q2 with the historical numbers before that and without, and I put on here 2015. And you'll see that Latin America total is about 30% of US spending for IT. And this, by the way, is IT total. So it not only includes hardware, it includes software, it includes services, and it includes telecommunications. It's not just one area, it's overall. And overall in Latin America, we're looking at 2011 around $300 billion. And I believe your slide said that IT services specifically was around 10% of that. Around 33 billion for 2011. And that's services in Latin America. Okay. And you know, when you look at 300 billion and you see the United States is spending about 1 trillion, okay, or 1,000 billion, okay, that's really not bad for Latin America. And remember, Latin America has a lot of, many countries. And this, by the way, includes all of the Caribbean and all of Central America. The IT spend in the Caribbean and most of Central America is very small. Bolivia, I'm glad she's not here yet. But Bolivia is pretty small. Okay, Ecuador is pretty small. Uruguay, strong, but small numbers. And even Chile is strong, but small numbers. So when you look at the 300 billion, we're talking about Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, and Argentina. Okay, Peru is growing fast, but it's again small numbers. All right, so it's mostly those 4 big countries that this 300 billion is being spent on. So when you look around and see the number of IT companies from around the world and from within Latin America that are expanding to other countries in Latin America or to Latin America, whether it be from Spain and Portugal, France and Germany, or whether it be from North America. There's a reason for that. When they look at Asia Pacific, most of that number is from India and China, where the competition is much stronger because there's many more companies there already doing IT, whether it be IT services or whether it be manufacturing. I mean, Lenovo, who bought the PC business from IBM, is now producing servers. Okay, and so we're seeing a lot of growth in China and in India that is offset by, okay, the companies that are already there. Whereas in Latin America, what we're seeing is mostly open territory for new companies. That's why you see downstairs we have Brazil IT is here, okay, with a number of companies moving that want to move from Brazil, not the least of which, of course, is Totus, okay, with applications. So it's an open, I don't want to say open field, but it really is an open economy in IT for companies from outside of the countries in Latin America, and a great opportunity. That's why they call it part of growth markets and why the name BRIC has gone away, because BRIC doesn't include Argentina, BRIC doesn't include Colombia, BRIC doesn't include Mexico, okay, and so all of those are big opportunities. Gartner every year does a study, which we call the EXP, Executive Program Study, where we ask a series of questions to our members. This year, it was over 2,000 members that responded, and the Latin American responses were double last year, at almost 150 responses in Latin America. So every year, the numbers you're looking at here are becoming more substantiated because we have more people answering the surveys. You'll notice that growth in Latin America has been pretty strong since 2006, and in fact much stronger in some cases like 2009 than the worldwide numbers. Okay. So when we look at 2011, where Latin American CIOs are saying they're going to have pretty flat budget growth, this does not mean they're not going to spend on IT. It means the budget size is not going to grow. And I honestly think, and of course worldwide it's only going to grow 1%, so worldwide there is a recognition from the IT world that in fact the recovery was not a recovery. Okay, and I think that's important because if you notice the problems with the euro and the problems with the American economy were not obvious last January when this was published. But the IT world was smart enough to see that the problems were still there. The recovery was not as certain as the President of the United States was representing, etc. Go ahead.
Just one comment about the number for 2011, Latin America budget. It has been strongly affected by Mexico, which is again affected by the American probable recession. So it is in Argentina, in Brazil, and in Colombia, IT budgets are growing, but the average in Latin America has been strongly affected by downturn in the Mexican budget.
And by the way, that's another good point. This is a weighted average. So that allows us to look at all companies as equal. A big company with a big budget has the same effect as a small company with a smaller budget because they don't spend as much on IT. So when you look at that, even though you may have an Argentine or a Brazilian company spending more on IT, it doesn't weigh more than the averages that come out of Mexico overall. So we use a weighted average. If I remember correctly, the unweighted average growth for Latin America was 5.9%. Yeah, I was going to say 6, so 5.9. Yeah. So you can see that the budgets are growing in real numbers. All right. But again, Mexico. The only thing I would disagree with Casio is I wouldn't say the probable recession. I'd say the recession with probable depression. Okay, I'm a bit more cynical about the American economy, which is one of the reasons why I live in Brazil. Okay. Anyway, the last thing I want to just mention to you is, and many of you were here last year and the year before, you've seen this chart. So for consistency purposes, I put this chart in here. We asked the CIOs, what are their top 3 technology priorities for 2011? Each year we ask them what that is. And then we rate them with all of the answers that came in. Now for the 2 Latin American columns here, you can see that we compare 2011 to 2010. There were only 2 new entries for 2011. One was infrastructure in general, wanting to build a more flexible infrastructure for IT. And a new one, which was IT management. Now this may, to me, it's kind of obvious, and it may be obvious to you. IT has been forever managing the business, right? So their job is to manage the business, run information technology to help manage the business, to help grow the business, etc. And we're very poor at using technology to manage IT. All of a sudden, it became aware to the CIOs that they should be using the analytics that they're using to run the business to run IT. In fact, one of the major application vendors, SAP, has a new line of software, I guess you'd say, or a new set of software specifically for managing IT that they're beginning to produce pieces of and roll out to the public. I suspect over time you're going to see the other major application vendors with software, with metrics, with performance management, with dashboards to manage the IT business. And it is, as you can see in Latin America, the #1 priority for Latin America CIOs, which my personal opinion is, we're ahead of the rest of the world here. It's only number 4 worldwide. It's number 1 in Latin America. And it's very important. The better you manage IT, the better you can spend whatever extra money you may have, which means to become more competitive, run your business better, and do all the other things that they want to do within IT and within the corporation. Cloud computing continues to be at the top of the list, number 1 worldwide, number 2 in Latin America. Both of us believe that it is probably the number 1 key to managing IT well and to running an IT department in a corporation is the proper mix of on-premise or private cloud mixed with public cloud. And as Cassio likes to call it, the silver bullet for small and medium-sized businesses. And Latin America is made up far majority of small and medium-sized businesses. What we're going to see is an increase in the availability of software as a service for the small and medium-sized enterprises. You're going to see other vendors as soon as tomorrow, okay, announcing products specifically for that market, for the SMB market. And so the vendors, the mega vendors, the big guys, are looking at products. SAP has Business One and by design. Oracle has e-business suite as a SaaS offering. You have Salesforce.com with a SaaS offering that's broadening out. Okay. Amazon with cloud infrastructure, more than just servers and storage. Amazon RDS is a database product that they offer. So you're starting to see more and more of this targeted at the SMB, because that's where the future is. If you look around at every large company in the world, they've all bought their applications. They've all bought their DBMSs. They've all bought their servers. The real business revenue generator for all of the mega vendors is going to be through partnerships, through OEMs, through ISVs, and through cloud providers to the small and medium-sized businesses that don't have the expertise, don't want to build the expertise, don't want to manage the infrastructure, and through cloud offerings, they now can have global, world-class type applications available to them. Okay? We'll take questions in a few minutes, but I believe...
Yeah. Well, this is probably the perfect opportunity for me to introduce my colleague, Mark. And I would like to ask him to comment on what is the importance of a flexible infrastructure. Why do CIOs around the world put it there as a priority?
So, thanks, folks. My name is Mark Margavicius. I'm an analyst in the infrastructure area within Gartner, focusing on virtualization. And to answer the question, we have found that among customers trying to implement technology, that it is no longer acceptable to deploy strictly with business value in mind. That many IT organizations are being held accountable for the infrastructures they're putting in place in areas of things like facilities, power management, and consumption of IT resource that necessarily may not be required to build out the infrastructure needed for running the business. And so many organizations are looking at new ways of building out an infrastructure to provide value that in essence can create differentiation within the market. Many case studies have been written. We have seen many customers approach the use of things like virtualization, cloud computing, and other resources in the internet that allow organizations to be more flexible, to most certainly acquire IT resource as needed, and on a more demand kind of operations that in essence help provide better value at lower cost. And so it is a pretty interesting time, quite frankly, looking at the market in terms of the types of services that are being made available, and that for many organizations, rethinking and how they do IT in a very different way is actually a very differentiated approach to achieving good value.
we're waiting for Elia, I guess she's on a presentation or something,
Yeah,
to come and talk about mobile. I will, I did not say this on stage this morning because I didn't want to really get the audience going, but for the press, I will tell you that one of the outcomes of this economic issues worldwide that we're beginning to see is that many of the big mega vendors, and many of the smaller companies too, but the big mega vendors that you're used to, HP, IBM, Oracle, SAP, Microsoft, are beginning to struggle. They have been now for 4, 5, 6, 7 months. You're seeing Cisco announce that they're going to get rid of their consumer business because they can't manage it and their corporate business. You're seeing HP announcing that they're going to get rid of the PC business. Again, same move. Everybody laughed at IBM, what, 5 years ago? I think it was, when they sold the PC business 6 years ago to Lenovo. And now all of a sudden everybody's doing that. They're finding out that doing consumer and corporate is not possible for a single company. Then you see companies like Apple coming along, who stays away from the corporate side and concentrates on the consumer side. However, what's a corporation? A corporation is consumers. So the way Apple is working their way into the corporation is through the employees who are normal consumers. And they don't have to have the corporate sales force, they don't have to have the corporate support forces and things like that, and yet they're becoming, you know, how many people in here are sitting with Apple something in front of you? An iPhone, an iPad, a Mac, or whatever, okay? And you know, your company is supporting it. You're using it for email. You're using it for corporate phone calls. So we're still going to see some struggling. HP's been having a lot of problems. They've announced a direction to move towards the cloud using their virtualization and their convergence fabric hardware, but they're still struggling. Microsoft is struggling. Okay, products like Kinect, products like Xbox, products like Windows 7 phone are not going to save Microsoft. What's going to save Microsoft is their corporate offerings, Windows Server and products like that. You're seeing other companies struggling in the world. And Oracle is announcing, I don't know if it's after 2 o'clock now, yes, so Oracle has actually just announced their first quarter earnings. I haven't seen them yet, but I suspect they're not as strong as people expected. And I think you're going to see that from more and more companies. And the consolidations are not done, and I mean the big consolidations. Today, SAP announced that they're buying an e-commerce business. I don't even remember the name of it, but that was announced this morning. But you're going to see some additional big ones like the Oracle Sun. Something has got to give. And companies like HP, SAP, Microsoft are going to be looking for new ways to grow and compete against the larger ones like Oracle and like IBM. Don't be surprised if you see, and I know this is a backwards rumor, because everybody's been talking about HP buying SAP. That can't happen today. HP doesn't have the value or the money to buy SAP, but guess what? SAP does have the money to buy HP. So there are many possibilities out there that could happen over the next 12 to 18 months, and some of that will be driven by these economic issues that you're going to be seeing worldwide.
CXO Community.